Chloe Finley met Harrison Payton in the middle of his company crisis. One of his newly acquired startups was imploding in the media. She was brought in as a PR fixer, bluntly tearing apart a boardroom full of overpaid yes-men, with a few surgical comments and a whiteboard marker. He was watching from the back of the room, arms crossed, a slight, amused tilt to his mouth. He offered to buy her a drink after the meeting. She said no. Then she billed him double. A week later, he called again. Not about business, but their relationship moved fast, never felt rushed. Harrison had a way of making even the smallest gesture feel deliberate, controlled. He booked entire restaurants, but showed up in jeans. Sent her rare first editions of her favorite authors, then showed up unannounced to read them with her on the couch. Their weekends blurred between black tie galas and barefoot breakfasts on her tiny balcony. He made her feel seen, not dazzled or seduced. Seen. That was the difference. Still, there were lines he never crossed. He never stayed over unless she asked. He never talked about his family unless pressed. Conversations about the future always swerved at the last second. When she joked about kids, he smiled like it was a fairy tale someone else believed in. Marriage came up occasionally. Not seriously. Always in that offhand way that let him maintain distance. If I ever married anyone, it'd be someone like you. You're the only person I could actually build a life with. You're the safe zone, Chloe. But he never said when. Never said yes. His world was high stakes and airtight. Everything in his penthouse had a key code. His calendar was protected by layers of assistants and lawyers. Even spontaneous trips required NDAs. Standard procedure, he said with a casual shrug. She signed them. She told herself it didn't matter. That what they had wasn't about paperwork. Still, sometimes, when she walked into his world, those glimmering towers and glass-walled meetings, she could feel the edges of it closing in. Like she was only welcome as long as she didn't touch the machinery. And yet, when they were alone, just her and him and the quiet, it felt real. He'd touch her like he was afraid she might disappear. He'd watch her like he was trying to memorize her. She didn't know it yet, but something was already ticking in the background. A clock she couldn't see. A line in a document that would unravel everything. But for now, there was just them. Two people in love, and a silence growing where trust should have been. The nausea had started 2 weeks ago. At first, Chloe thought it was stress. Too many late nights, too much coffee, not enough sleep. But when her cycle skipped past its due date, and she caught herself crying at a dog food commercial, she knew. 3 tests later, there was no denying it. Pregnant. She sat on the edge of her bathtub, heart thudding, staring at the second pink line like it was a glitch in her reality. Her first reaction wasn't fear. It was wonder. This tiny spark inside her. A life. A future. Her child. But the panic crept in fast behind the wonder. Harrison, she tried to imagine how he would react. But all she could see were the little moments she'd brushed aside before. The way he stiffened when kids cried in restaurants. How he subtly angled away from toddlers who ran too close. At a friend's holiday party last year, a child reached for his watch, sticky fingers smudging the polished glass. Harrison's smile had vanished for a full 2 seconds. He loved control. Kids were chaos. He still dropped hints about marriage, sure. Offhand comments, warm glances, that occasional faraway look like he could maybe see a future. But he never said it, never committed. And now she had a secret growing inside her that would force the question neither of them had truly asked. She didn't tell him, not yet. A week later, while he was away in Zurich, she stayed at his penthouse. He'd asked her to water the plants, check the mail. It lived in. She wandered into his office, looking for a charger. The room was sleek and cold, all steel and glass, like everything else in his life. His desk drawers were locked, but one of the file boxes beside them wasn't. She flipped through contracts, most of them corporate. Then a thick, leather-bound folder caught her eye. Prenuptial agreement. She hesitated. Curiosity won. She skimmed it. Standard clauses, asset protections, non-disclosures. Cold, but expected. Then her eyes froze on a paragraph halfway down the page. In the event that any offspring is conceived or born prior to legal marriage, said child shall have no legal or financial claim to the estate or holdings of Harrison Payton. The mother, likewise, shall forfeit any claim, support, or guardianship consideration related to the Payton estate. Chloe stared at the words, her stomach hollowing out. It wasn't just a clause, it was a wall. A message. He had planned for this, anticipated it, protected himself from her and any child she might bear. The realization hit hard and cold. Harrison didn't just fear chaos. He had structured his entire life to eliminate it, even from her. She closed the folder slowly, put everything back exactly as she found it, walked out of the room without looking back. She didn't cry. Not then. There would be time for that later. Right now, she had a decision to make. She waited until he got back from Zurich. They had dinner at her place. He brought wine and kissed her like nothing had changed. She watched him across the table, trying to memorize the shape of his mouth, the weight of his voice, the way he said her name. She told herself this would be the last time. After dinner, she said it calmly, like she'd rehearsed 1,000 times in the mirror. I can't do this anymore, Harrison. He blinked, smiled a little. You're joking. She shook her head. I want more. You're not ready. I need to focus on my career while I get over you. That's not what this is, he said, quietly. But he didn't press, didn't ask what changed, didn't fight. She half hoped he would, that he'd pull her into his arms, say the words she'd been aching to hear. Stay, marry me. Let's make it work. Instead, he stood, kissed her forehead, like she was something he already lost, and left. She walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and threw up for the second time that day. She disappeared from his life completely, changed numbers, moved into a different neighborhood, gave birth alone in a small birthing center under a different name. No family came, no partner waited outside the delivery room. Just her, clutching the hand of a nurse, trying not to scream. Her son was born with wide, storm-gray eyes and a quiet strength, just like his father. She named him Miles, for movement, for the distance she put between her past and his future. No child support, no trust fund, no calls. She didn't tell a soul who the father was. Her pride wouldn't let her. She told herself she had made a clean break, that she had chosen freedom. But freedom came with a cost. PR was out. Too public. Too many photos. Too many chances someone from Harrison's world might find her. So she pivoted. She worked for an online life coaching startup, filming videos in the early hours while Miles slept. She tutored ESL students in the evenings. On weekends, she gave private singing lessons to kids whose parents could afford them. None of it paid well. All of it kept them afloat. Some days she was too tired to cry. Other days, she cried while folding laundry. Miles grew up happy. That was what mattered. He was bright, thoughtful, funny, asked deep questions and made up his own bedtime stories. Every now and then, someone'd comment, "He looks like someone famous." She always smiled and changed the subject. But the resemblance was undeniable. The same eyes, the same arched brow when he was skeptical, the same quiet way of watching the room before speaking. Harrison lived in Miles' face like a ghost she couldn't evict. Still, she never reached out. She made a promise to herself and stuck to it. Until the diagnosis. And suddenly, silence was no longer an option. It started small, subtle. At first, Chloe thought she was imagining it. a slightly gray cast to Miles' skin, faint shadows under his eyes. But he was eating fine, sleeking through the night, still singing to himself when he colored, still peppering her with questions about planets and bugs and why toast always lands butter side down. She told herself not to worry. First-time mom nerves. Probably nothing. Kids go through phases, right? But the feeling didn't go away. Every time she looked at him, she felt a quiet pull in her gut. Something wasn't right. She booked a pediatrician visit, routine blood work, no alarms. Maybe he's just pale, the doctor said. He's active and alert, he's doing great. So she let it go, until the night everything changed. Miles was 3.5. It was a Tuesday. She was folding laundry on the couch, half watching an old movie, when he came tearing down the hallway in his dinosaur pajamas, clutching a paper airplane. "Mommy, look at what I..." He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes fluttered, then rolled back. The paper slipped from his fingers. And then he dropped. A sound she would never forget. The soft thud of his body hitting the floor. "Miles!" She was on her knees, hands trembling, trying to turn him over, calling his name louder and louder, panic mounting with every second he didn't respond. "Miles, Miles, baby, wake up. Please, please wake up." His eyelids twitched. And then, just as suddenly, he gasped. Drew in air like someone coming up from underwater. His small body convulsed once, then went limp against her chest. She was already dialing 911. The ambulance lights painted her apartment walls red and white. Chloe rode in the back with Miles, clutching his hand while a paramedic checked his vitals. He was awake, but groggy, his little face pale, eyes unfocused. He didn't cry. That scared her more than anything. At the hospital, they ran tests for hours. Blood work, imaging, neuroscans. She sat in a plastic chair in the corner of a hospital pediatric room that smelled like antiseptic and fruit punch, still wearing mismatched socks and a panic that wouldn't loosen its grip. Finally, a young doctor came in, holding a clipboard, and that calm, practiced expression Chloe had learned to hate. "We've found some irregularities," he began. "We're not jumping to conclusions, but there are signs pointing to a rare genetic blood disorder, possibly a form of severe aplastic anemia or an early-stage marrow failure." Her world blurred. "Wait, what does that mean? What does he need? Is it cancer? We don't want to use that word yet, but it's serious. His bone marrow isn't producing enough healthy blood cells. That's why he collapsed. It's been building quietly. We caught it early." She nodded, didn't feel her legs. "What's the treatment?" she asked. He hesitated. In his case, there are two options. One is long-term management, blood transfusions, immunosuppressants, but that's not a cure. It's just buying time. And the other? A stem cell transplant, ideally from a genetically matched donor. It's aggressive, but it could fully restore his marrow function. Her voice cracked. "And how much does something like that cost?" The doctor didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. That night, after Miles finally fell asleep in the hospital bed beside her, Chloe stepped into the hallway and stared out the window. She had no savings. Every dollar went to rent, groceries, and keeping their life stitched together with frayed thread. The online life coach job paid just enough to survive. Her tutoring gigs were irregular. The voice lessons canceled half the time. She wasn't even sure her insurance would cover a third of the blood work, let alone a six-figure transplant. And even if the system would help, it would take time. Time Miles didn't have. She gripped the windowsill, eyes burning, jaw clenched so hard it hurt. There was only one person in the world with both the means and the DNA to save her son, and she had sworn never to speak to him again. She wrestled with the decision. For days, Chloe tried everything else. She called every specialist within driving distance, applied for emergency aid, medical grants, nonprofit programs. She waited on hold for hours, only to be told funding was frozen, or that Miles didn't meet the criteria. She tried crowdfunding, but didn't go public. She couldn't post his face, couldn't risk someone recognizing the resemblance. Her pride still stood between her and the truth. She went to her apartment wall, tacked with sticky notes and to-do lists, and stared at the number circled in red. The estimated cost of the transplant and recovery: $317,000. It might as well have been $1 million. Every night she sat by Miles' hospital bed, pretending everything was fine. She read to him, played his favorite music, smiled when her voice cracked. But when he fell asleep, she curled into the corner of the room and broke silently, over and over. Still, she couldn't bring herself to say the words. Not yet. Then came the worst night. His fever spiked and he stopped talking mid-sentence again. The nurses swarmed in. Machines beeped too fast. She was pushed gently back, hands shaking. She realized, standing there, powerless and useless, that her pride had already cost her too much, and it might cost her son his life. That night, after he was stable, she stepped into the hallway, took a breath so deep it hurt, and pulled out her phone. There were a dozen numbers she deleted and memorized. Only one still mattered: Harrison Payton. She stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "I wouldn't reach out if it wasn't urgent. We need to talk. It's about a child. He's yours." She hovered over send. Backspaced. Tried again. "His name is Miles. He's 6. He needs help only you can give. Please, don't ignore this." Still wrong. Still too much. Too little. Too exposed. She finally just typed, "Harrison, I know this is a shock. I have a son. Your son. He's sick. And I need your help." And hit send. She stared at the screen, waiting. The message mark delivered, then read. No reply. Seconds passed, then minutes. She closed her eyes. Her body felt cold all over. Maybe he'd change numbers. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he'd block her and that would be the end. Then the screen lit up. Incoming call. Harrison Payton. Her breath caught. She let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Chloe?" His voice. The same. Cold, smooth, steady. She swallowed hard. "Yes." A pause. "You said I have a son?" Her voice broke. "Yes. And he needs you, Harrison. He needs help. Please don't hang up." "I'm not going to hang up," he said, voice quieter now. "Where are you?" The phone confrontation. The silence on the other end stretched. Then Harrison spoke, sharp and clipped. "You had my child and never told me." Chloe closed her eyes. "Yes." "For 6 years." "Yes." "What the hell were you thinking?" Her fingers tightened around the phone. "I was thinking about a clause in your prenup that said any child born before marriage would be disinherited. That the mother would get nothing. No support, no protection. That clause wasn't about you." "Then why did it include me?" He didn't respond. That silence said everything. "You structured your life to keep people out, Harrison. I found that clause and realized if I told you I was pregnant, I'd be legally tying a rope around my neck and my child's. You made it clear, even indirectly, that no one got through your walls." He exhaled slowly. "You still should have told me. And you should have asked if I needed you. Ever." Her voice cracked. "But I'm not here to fight. I'm here because Miles is sick." "What's wrong with him?" She told him everything, voice steady, like she'd rehearsed it. Because she had. Every night for a week. By the end, Harrison was silent again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was stunned, crushed. "Where are you?" he asked again. She gave him the hospital name. "Room 713, we're here now. I'll be there in an hour." He arrived in 47 minutes. Chloe saw him from down the hallway. Tall, immaculate, still in his sharp charcoal coat, but slower, hesitant. Not the man who once owned every room. Not this time. She stepped out to meet him. His eyes locked on hers, then dropped to the doorway beside her. He didn't speak. "You can see him," she said, voice low. "But don't say anything about being his father." "Not yet. He doesn't know." Miles tilted his head. "Hi." Harrison cleared his throat. "Hey there, buddy." "You're tall," Miles said. Harrison's mouth twitched. "So I've been told." Chloe watched as something in Harrison cracked, visibly. His eyes softened in a way she hadn't seen in years. Maybe never. Not even with her. Miles held up his drawing. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Harrison took it from him with surprising care. "I do now." For a moment, none of them spoke. It was fragile, unspoken. Chloe stood in the doorway, blinking fast, swallowing everything that threatened to rise. Miles yawned, then looked at Chloe. "Monty, is he your friend?" She hesitated. Before she could speak, Harrison said gently, "I'm someone who cares a lot about you, Miles." The boy smiled. "Clé." And just like that, he went back to coloring. But the silence between Chloe and Harrison now held something else. Not just history, not just pain. Possibility. The first few days were awkward. Harrison came every morning, impeccably dressed, always with something in his hand. Books, puzzles, fresh-pressed juice Miles wouldn't touch. Chloe watched him try to shrink himself, to soften the way he spoke, to learn how to kneel at a child's eye level. She'd never seen him so out of his element. And yet, Miles liked him. Immediately. Kids don't care about tension in a room. They just know when someone listens. And Harrison did. He sat with Miles for hours, building block towers, letting him explain the difference between a triceratops and a stegosaurus. One afternoon, Harrison stayed after Chloe came back from a coffee run. He stood by the window, arms folded, watching Miles sleep. "You did this alone," he said quietly. Chloe nodded. "I don't know how to fix it," he added. She didn't turn around. "You can't. Just don't make this about guilt. Be here. That's all he needs right now." Harrison looked at her. "And what about you?" She didn't answer, because that was more complicated. Because part of her still remembered how easy it had been for him to let her go. The media caught wind fast. A nurse posted a blurry hallway photo of Harrison sitting in a pediatric room with a child. It hit a tabloid blog in hours. Then a headline surfaced: "Billionaire Harrison Payton has secret love child?" Within 24 hours, his PR team was in crisis mode. Chloe's phone exploded. Calls, emails. Journalists digging into her old life, her clients, her disappearing act. Someone leaked a partial medical document. Strangers were speculating on her son's blood type. Harrison offered to shield them, to move her and Miles into a private wing of his estate, off-grid, no press. She refused. "I'm not going back into your world just to be hidden again," she said. "Then I'll come into yours," he said, without hesitation, "whatever that looks like." But the legal ripples had already started. The clause in the prenup, that forgotten sentence in a folder she should have never found, was now public. Some thought it was cruel, others thought it was smart. But either way, it cast a shadow over everything. Lawyers began circling. His board demanded a review of his holdings. The family trust, untouched for decades, was under scrutiny. If Miles was his son, legally, the clause created complications, especially if it could be argued that Harrison knew and did nothing. Chloe was caught in the crossfire of old money politics and headlines. But the only thing that mattered was Miles. His transplant was now scheduled. A genetic match had been confirmed. Harrison. In the hospital room, just before the procedure, Harrison crouched beside Miles's bed. The boy was groggy, scared but brave. "I'll be right here when you wake up," Harrison promised. Miles blinked slowly. "You're not just Mommy's friend, are you?" Harrison looked up at Chloe, who was frozen in place. "No," he said finally. "I'm your dad." Miles stared at him for a moment, then reached out and held his hand. Chloe looked away before her heart gave out. By the time Miles was out of surgery, the media frenzy was no longer background noise. It was a storm. Paparazzi camped outside the hospital. News anchors speculated daily about the secret child of billionaire Harrison Payton. A photo of Chloe holding Miles's hand as they walked through the corridor, heads down, became front-page tabloid material. Harrison had kept silent until now. 3 days after the transplant, he called a press conference. Chloe watched it live from the hospital TV, arms crossed, lips tight. He stood at the podium, no PR handler behind him, no assistant, just him. He cleared his throat. "I'll keep this brief." Cameras flashed. Reporters buzzed. "I have a son," he said. "His name is Miles. He's 6 years old. He is brave, kind, smarter than I'll ever be, and he deserves better than the media circus surrounding his illness." More flashes. Louder now. "I did not know about him until recently. If I had, things would have been different. I failed. As a man. As someone who once claimed to love his mother and then didn't protect her when she needed it most." Chloe sat upright. "I let my fear of vulnerability cost me everything that mattered. And I'm sorry. To Chloe Finley, in public, because I was a coward in private." He looked directly into the camera. "I'm asking you, on behalf of a very sick child, to let this family heal. Give us space. Respect their privacy." The room was silent now. You could hear the clicks slowing. "I am not the man I was 5 years ago, but I'm trying to be the one they need now." He stepped away from the podium and walked off. Later, Harrison knocked on the door of Miles's hospital room. Chloe stepped out into the hallway with him. "You didn't tell me you were doing that," she said. "I didn't think I needed your permission to do the right thing." She gave a half smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You didn't lie. That's something." He nodded slowly. "I meant what I said. I'm not the same man. You're still wearing a $10,000 coat." He smiled a little, then sobered. "When you left, it changed me. At first, I hated you for it. Told myself you didn't give me a chance. But the truth is, I never gave you a reason to stay." She said nothing. "I'm getting help. Real help. Therapy. Accountability. I want to be a father to Miles. And I want to support you, both of you." She looked away. "We don't need your money. Not outside of Miles' medical bills. I'm not offering money, Chloe. I'm offering support. That includes financial, yes. But it's also about showing up. Staying. Fighting. Being someone you count on." He took a step closer. "You deserve more than my money. You deserve unconditional and unlimited support. You've carried this alone for too long. I'm not letting you walk away again. I'm here to fight for this, for you, for him. Something I should have done 5 years ago." Chloe stared at him, every inch of her body resisting how badly she wanted to believe him. "We're not a family just because you showed up late, Harrison. I know. That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness tonight." He looked toward the hospital room window where Miles slept, tangled in tubes and dreams. "I'm asking for the chance to earn it, one day at a time." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. By the second week of Miles' recovery, Harrison was a near-permanent fixture at the hospital. He took meetings on his phone in the hallway, signed deals from a laptop balanced on a cafeteria tray, and waved off every assistant trying to drag him back downtown. But not everyone was willing to be waved off. The board of Payton Global sent a formal letter requesting an emergency review of executive availability, fiduciary responsibility, and reputation management. Translation: "You're spending too much time at a hospital bedside, and not enough defending our billions." Worse, they wanted documentation, proof, that Miles was his biological son. Harrison barely finished reading the letter before crumpling it in one hand. When he told Chloe, she went still. "They want DNA proof?" she asked. "You already have it." "They want public proof, legal, official, something they can file to protect the estate." Her mouth twisted. "So it's about money again?" "No," he said firmly. "It's about legacy. I'm not letting them turn Miles into a headline or a liability, so I'm changing everything. Trusts, inheritance, naming rights, the works." She stared at him. "I'm putting things in place to protect him," he said. "No matter what happens to me, Miles will never have to fight for a seat at a table with my name on it." Chloe looked away, her voice quiet. "That's a long way from a prenup that cut him off before he was born." "I know," he said, "and I'll never stop regretting it." They stood outside the hospital that evening, under a quiet gray sky. Chloe sipped bad coffee. Harrison stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, tense but calm. "I want to ask you something," he said. "Something important." She looked up. "I'd like to give him my name, not take yours away, just add mine beside it. Miles Finley Payton." The cup in her hand began to tremble. "I know it's just a name on paper," he added, "but to me it means I'm claiming him fully. Not just in press releases or hospital forms. In every room I walk into for the rest of my life." Chloe didn't speak. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "Only if you agree," he said, gently. "Only if you think he should carry it." The tears came before she could stop them, hot and heavy and fast. All the years she'd held it together, all the nights she'd told herself she didn't need anyone. It cracked open in a single moment. Not because she wanted the name, but because, for the first time, she didn't feel alone. She nodded, wiping her face. "Yes," she whispered. "He'd like that." Harrison moved to her side, didn't reach for her, just stood there, steady, present. He didn't try to fix her. He just stayed. The weeks after Miles came home were quiet. Almost too quiet. Harrison offered his penthouse without hesitation. It was closer to the hospital, more secure, and had a private elevator. Chloe agreed, not because she wanted to, but because it was practical. That's how she justified it anyway. Harrison was perfect. And that was the problem. He stocked Miles' favorite snacks, cleared his schedule to attend every follow-up appointment, sat on the floor and colored with his son like a man who had never missed a day. And it scared the hell out of Chloe, because she could see it, the change in him. The warmth, the effort, the guilt underneath it all. And she wanted to believe it, but the part of her that bled alone in a delivery room, that scraped together rent while feeding a toddler dry cereal for dinner, wasn't ready to let go of the past. She wanted to forgive, but her heart still ached, like it had just happened. It happened on a Tuesday. Chloe was home alone. Miles at a routine checkup with a nurse escort. Harrison in back-to-back board meetings. She was halfway through folding laundry when the elevator dinged. She wasn't expecting anyone. A sharp knock followed. Not Harrison's. When she opened the door, Melinda Carson stood in the hallway, pristine in a sculpted cream coat, heels that never touched dirt, and a polished smile that made Chloe instantly want to shut the door. "Well," Melinda said with sugar-laced venom. "So it's true. You're back." Chloe didn't move. "Can I help you?" Melinda stepped forward without being invited, eyes scanning the penthouse like she was already redecorating it in her mind. "I was in the building. Thought I'd drop by, say hello. Harrison and I go way back." She walked to the center of the living room. "This place hasn't changed much, except for the toys on the floor, of course." Chloe's voice was calm but firm. "He's not here." "Oh, I know, I didn't come for him." Her smile sharpened. "I came for clarity." There it was. The real reason. Melinda had been circling for years. Chloe knew that from the assistant, Harrison's longtime gatekeeper, who'd quietly become Chloe's ally. Between deliveries, she'd whispered gossip like confessions. "Melinda keeps trying. He never bites." She's not used to being ignored. Now Melinda stood here, eyeing the space Chloe occupied with a polished cruelty that came from privilege and envy. "You've been gone for what? 6 years?" Melinda said. "And suddenly you're living here again." "With a child. A child no one even knew existed." Chloe folded her arms. "Sounds like you've been reading the tabloids." "I have investments in Harrison's ventures," Melinda replied, voice crisp. "I have a right to know where his head is." Chloe let a beat of silence stretch before she answered. "Then maybe you should ask him." She stepped forward, eyes level. "Because if you came here to mark territory, you're in the wrong place." Melinda's face stiffened, just for a moment. "You know," she said quietly, "men always come back to their type. You might be the moment, Chloe, but I've always been the long game." Chloe smiled. Cold, calm, lethal. "Funny, he hasn't returned your calls in years. Sounds like the game ended before it started." Melinda's mask cracked, just slightly. Then she turned on her heel, heels clicking sharply as she walked to the elevator. "I'll be watching," she said. "You already are," Chloe replied, and closed the door. Later that night, Harrison returned to find Chloe quiet. She told him about Melinda. His face darkened. "She had no right." "I know," Chloe said, "but she wanted to remind me how fragile this all is." He stepped closer. "This isn't fragile. It's just new, unfinished." She looked at him then, really looked, and in that moment, she realized something had shifted. She still didn't trust what they were building, but she no longer believed it was fake. She turned away before he could see her eyes shine. The challenge came from inside the Payton estate. Not the board this time, but Harrison's family trust attorney, an old-school silk tie relic named Charles Granger, who had represented the Paytons for decades. He called an urgent meeting at the firm's headquarters. Chloe came with Harrison, not because she wanted to, but because she had to hear it for herself. Charles barely acknowledged her as they sat across the marble table. "I've reviewed your requests," he began, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "The proposed changes to the Payton estate, adding Miles Finley Payton as an heir, naming him in the second-generation trust, assigning a direct line to ownership, are significant." Harrison leaned forward. "He's my son. That's not significant. That's fact." "Yes, well," Granger said, eyes flicking to Chloe. "The issue is documentation, legal timeline. The child was born out of wedlock. Unacknowledged for years, and by strict reading of the trust charter, technically disqualified." Chloe's stomach twisted. Granger continued, "There are alternatives. We could create a secondary trust in Miles' name. Quiet, separate. It avoids a public amendment to the core estate." Chloe's voice cut across the table. "So you're suggesting he's hidden, funded, but separate? Like a secret?" Didn't flinch. "I'm suggesting discretion. The kind this family has long survived on." Harrison stood, slowly. "No, my son will not be a footnote or a side account. You rewrite the trust, add his name, or I burn the entire structure to the ground and start over. You'd gut your own legacy over this?" "No," Harrison said. "I'm building my legacy with him. Everything before was survival. This," he pointed to Chloe, "this is the real future." Chloe felt her heart stutter. Granger's jaw tightened. "Very well. We'll begin the amendment paperwork, but understand, it will cause friction and attention." "Good," Harrison said. "Let them." That night they were quiet on the penthouse balcony. The city lights glowed beneath them, alive and distant. Chloe stood with her arms crossed, watching traffic. "You didn't have to fight like that," she said softly. "Not for me. I wasn't fighting for you." She glanced over. "I was fighting for him, for Miles, for the version of me that should have existed 7 years ago." Chloe's voice was quiet, bitter at the edges. "You say all the right things now. You do all the right things. But I can't help remembering how easy it was for you to let me go." Harrison stepped closer. "I didn't let you go, Chloe. I didn't even know I was losing you. You disappeared, And I blamed you for that, for a long time, until I realized it was all my fault. Harrison, you were cold, closed off. You made me feel like an outsider in your life. I was closed off because I was terrified of being used, of being loved for the wrong reasons. I grew up in a world where affection was a transaction. You were the first thing I couldn't control. So I froze. Chloe turned to face him, eyes burning. And while you were frozen, I was alone. I gave birth by myself. I raised him alone. I worked until my voice cracked just to buy groceries. So forgive me if I can't just forget that. He didn't flinch. I'm not asking you to forget or forgive. I'm just asking you to let me keep showing up. Let me earn it, day by day. No shortcuts. She didn't speak. He took a breath. Do you feel anything for me anymore? Chloe blinked. Then, that's the problem, Harrison. I feel everything. She turned and walked back inside, tears in her eyes, but her steps steady. He didn't follow, but he didn't leave either. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Miles was at a supervised playgroup on the hospital grounds, his first time out without Chloe since the transplant. Harrison made pancakes from a box, badly, but with a lot of heart. Chloe sat at the counter, coffee in hand, watching him struggle with the spatula. He flipped one onto the floor, swore. She laughed for the first time in days. He looked up at her, something warm and tentative in his eyes. You ever think about what this would have looked like? He asked. If I hadn't blown it. Chloe's smile faded, but she nodded. Sometimes. I think about it every day. He set the spatula down, came round the island, and leaned on the counter across from her. I want to ask you something, he said. Her guard went up immediately. Harrison, no, hear me out. She stared at him, wary. What if we got married? He froze. The silence stretched. Then, don't ask me to marry you because we have a child. I won't say yes out of guilt. He stepped closer. I'm not asking because of Miles. I'm saying I love you. Right here. Now. And back then, I just didn't know how to show it. I let fear control me. She swallowed. Her hands tightened around her mug. You were the first person who ever saw me without the empire, without the press releases and the polished pitch, and that scared me. But since the day you left, I haven't wanted or needed anyone else. His voice softened. I'm not asking you to decide today. I know your heart isn't ready, but I'm staying until it is. I want forever with you, as my wife, not because of obligation, not because of Miles, because you're the only thing that ever felt real. She blinked fast. You're too good at speeches now. He half smiled. Therapy and regret. She laughed, but tears burned behind it. He reached out, gently touched her hand. Besides, he added, it'd be pretty great if we raised our son together. Isn't that the dream you had before you saw the clause? She looked at him then, really looked. You did write that clause, Harrison. He shook his head. No. It was baked into the family trust. My great-grandfather wrote it. I didn't even read the damn thing until you were gone. She stared at him, stunned. You're serious? I would have burned it the second I found it, if I had known. Chloe turned away. It was too much, too close, too soon. He said quietly, please forgive me, and just consider marrying me one day. Not for Miles, not because of the past, but because we might still have a future. She didn't answer, but she didn't shut him down either. For the first time, she didn't pull away from his touch. And that was enough, for now. Chloe woke from a nap on the couch, sunlight pouring through the windows. She stretched, blinked, and froze. A ring was on her finger. Not flashy, not new. Vintage platinum, oval diamond, delicate filigree along the band. Worn with time, but unmistakably beautiful. She stared at it, for a long time, unmoving, barely breathing. Behind her, Harrison leaned against the doorway, arms folded, watching her carefully. "That was my mother's ring," he said softly. She turned her head, startled. "I'm not asking," he continued. "I'm not rushing. I just thought, maybe wear it. See how it feels on you. And if someday you're ready, then I'll get you your own." She looked down at the ring again, her throat tight. But she didn't take it off. The next evening, all three of them stepped into the Payton Global Shareholder Gala together. Harrison wore a tailored suit and calm authority. Chloe stood at his side in a sleek black gown that said presence, not accessory. And Miles, in a miniature navy blazer, held both their hands as cameras flashed and heads turned. It was their first social appearance as a unit, and everyone was watching. Melinda Carson arrived halfway through the event, scanning the room like a queen reclaiming her court. Till she saw them. She glided across the floor, practiced smile in place, her steps smooth as glass. "Harrison," she purred, touching his arm. "It's been forever." He nodded. "Melinda." Her eyes flicked to Chloe and Miles, barely acknowledging them. "And who are these guests?" Before Harrison could speak, Melinda went on, dismissive. "Yes, I heard. He's your son. Adorable. But she's just the mother, right?" Chloe raised her hand slowly, catching the light with a flick of her fingers. The rings sparkled. "So, Miss Carson," Chloe said, voice sweet but sharp. "What exactly does this mean to you?" Melinda's expression cracked. The room stilled. "I spent 2 years trying to get your attention," she snapped. "And now you think this little boy is going to make you happy." Harrison stepped in before Chloe could respond. "That boy is my son," he said firmly. "And Chloe isn't just the mother. She's my wife." Gasps rippled. "She is my family. They both are. And let me be perfectly clear. If anyone here thinks I'll let power games, board politics, or bitter old flames threaten them, you're mistaken. I will burn this company to the ground and start over again with nothing if I have to. But I will not lose them." Everyone went silent. Then came a voice from the corner of the room. "About time you found your happiness." Mrs. Randell, elegant, white-haired, respected. Her family owned the largest share outside the Paytons. When she spoke, people listened. "You have my support," she added with a smile. The room slowly relaxed. The message was received, loud and clear. The gala ended, the world finally knowing what Chloe never thought would be hers to claim. That night, the penthouse was quiet. Miles had fallen asleep in the guest room after begging for one more bedtime story. Harrison read it to him, twice. Chloe stood in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping chamomile tea. She wasn't really drinking, the ring still on her finger, catching the low golden light. Harrison joined her a moment later, leaning against the island, arms folded, sleeves pushed to his elbows. "You're quiet," he said. She nodded, eyes still on her mug. "Just thinking." He didn't press. She looked up at him, really looked, and her voice came out quieter than she expected. "I don't want to sleep in the guest room tonight." He stilled. "Okay. I mean, I don't want to sleep alone. Anymore. Not because of Miles. Not because of the house. Because I'm your wife now, and maybe I'm finally ready to feel like it." His expression shifted, something tender and reverent in his eyes. "Are you sure?" Chloe nodded, slowly. "It's not even about comfort. It's about trust, about choosing to let you all the way in." She set the mud down, walked toward him, stopped inches away. "And I think I'm finally ready to try." Harrison reached up, gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. And for the first time since the day she'd left him, she followed. No fear, no hesitation, just heart. They married the same day. No headlines, no guests. Just Harrison, Chloe, Miles watching from the window with a juice box, and 2 witnesses, his long-standing assistant and the family lawyer. No fanfare, just a promise. Simple, solid, sacred. And for the first time in a long, long time, Chloe didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she'd finally come home. The morning after, sunlight crept in slowly, casting golden lines across the bedroom wall. Chloe stirred beneath the sheets, the smell of coffee faint in the air. She blinked against the light, momentarily disoriented, then turned her head and saw him. Harrison was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed in a white t-shirt and sleep-tousled hair, holding a steaming mug in both hands like he didn't want to wake her. "You watching me sleep?" she asked. Voice hoarse with sleep. He turned, smiled. "Little bit." She stretched, one bare leg slipping from under the covers. "Creepy. Beautiful." Chloe sat up, the sheets falling to her waist, the air cool against her skin. But for the first time, she didn't pull them up to shield herself. There was no need. Last night had been quiet. No rush, no fireworks. Just warmth, closeness, breathing the same space, like they were finally allowed to exhale. "How long have you been up?" she asked. "A while. Didn't want to move. Didn't want to miss this." She looked at him for a long beat, heart full and aching in a new way. "I didn't expect to feel this." "Calm," she said. "I thought I'd wake up with doubts." "Do you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be." He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "You are." A small knock came at the door. "Mom?" Miles' voice, muffled. "Can we make pancakes?" Chloe smiled at Harrison. "We should probably go act like responsible parents." "Give it 10 minutes," he said. "Just 10. She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Okay, just 10. And for once, 10 minutes felt like forever. 5 years later, the backyard was filled with the sound of laughter, light, free, and a little chaotic. Chloe sat on a picnic blanket under the maple tree, barefoot, her sundress ruffled by the breeze. In her lap sat a wriggling toddler with wild curls and dimples deep enough to bury secrets in. "Amelia," she said with mock sternness, "you cannot put blueberries in your shoe." Amelia looked up with her father's eyes and her mother's mischief. "Why not?" Chloe sighed, smiling. "Because shoes are not snacks, baby girl." Across the lawn, Miles, now 11, and all limbs and clever comebacks, was showing Harrison how to fly the new drone he got for his birthday. Harrison, for all his business genius, couldn't keep the thing in the air for more than 10 seconds. "Dad," Miles called, laughing. "You have to stop flying it into the tree. It's not a bird." Harrison threw up his hands. "You said this was user-friendly." Chloe watched them from across the grass, her heart full in a way she'd once thought she'd never feel again. Marriage wasn't perfect. It was real. Some nights they argued about nonsense, took turns being tired, stubborn, or too busy, but Harrison never stopped choosing her, and she never stopped choosing him. That was the difference. He still kept his promises, still showed up, still fought for them, not from guilt or fear, but from love. Amelia crawled off Chloe's lap and toddled toward her father, squealing with delight as Harrison scooped her up, spinning her in the air. "Okay," he said, grinning. "Someone else take over drone duty. I'm being recruited." Miles took the controller with pride. Harrison crossed the lawn and sat beside Chloe. Amelia snuggled into his chest, already half asleep. "You good?" he asked. She looked at her family, their family, and nodded. "I'm perfect." And for the first time in a lifetime, it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like home. Thanks for listening to Green Tea Tales. Help our channel to grow with likes, shares, and subscribes.